Hi, my name is Senior Airman Purdy, and this is for the professional performance task. The person that I've chose to speak on today is Master Sergeant Whitaker. He is a fellow 4N. We met in the medical group, although we were working in different sections. He was the flight chief of the family health clinic, and I was working in the pediatric clinic at the time. The way that we know each other, despite our differences in location, is through his people skills. He would branch out, he would want to talk to people, see how they're doing. I think that, as well as his professionalism and probably a lot of other things, is why he got chosen to be a first sergeant. He currently works at the 62nd Aircraft Maintenance Unit. Some duties of a first sergeant include providing advice and assistance to the commander, as well as taking on the responsibility for the morale, well-being, and conduct of the enlisted members in that unit. I believe that professionalism is a spectrum. However, in this case, I think commitment is a huge factor. In order to get picked up for first sergeant duty, you have to show commitment through your actions as well as your morals, both professionally and personally. Professional being the dedication to what the first sergeant duty entails, and personal being, like I mentioned earlier, his people skills. Your people have to feel comfortable enough to come to you in their time of need, and therefore, as a first sergeant, you do have to hold yourself to a higher standard. Now, how do I think he embodies the profession of arms? There are many different moving parts in this, but holding people accountable is definitely up there. You know, he's going to point out when you're doing wrong, but he's also going to praise you when you're doing right. A good example of this is through one of the airmen that he supervised. This airman was a good friend of mine. However, he was messing up. He was not doing what he was supposed to be doing. And he would tell me very frequently that Sergeant Whitaker would get on him, would hold him accountable and responsible for his actions. But the thing that stuck out to me the most was that this airman never talked poorly on Sergeant Whitaker. If anything, he just talked about how much he respected him. You know, that really spoke volumes to me, because I personally know people who have gotten in trouble a lot, have been held accountable, and they have resentment towards those people that are doing that to them. So for this airman to have countlessly gotten in trouble, for him to say how much he respects Sergeant Whitaker and never speak poorly on him, really says a lot about Sergeant Whitaker's character. This airman would also invite people out to the Club 5-6 after work for dinner, and I was always surprised to see Sergeant Whitaker sitting at that table right alongside him. That spoke volumes to me as well, because he was able to separate what happened at work and their personal relationship to show that he still cared about him at the end of the day, which says a lot more than most leaders, I feel like. Him and I have that relationship as well, because you know, he did care about me when I worked in the med group, but the fact that he works at a completely different unit and he still reaches out to me and shows that he cares, I feel like also speaks volumes, because there are people I work with on a day-to-day basis who don't even do that. A good example of a story between him and I is that about 2 weeks before this ALS class was supposed to start, he did one of his routine checkups, asked me how I was and if I had an ALS class date yet. I did not. I didn't actually have any updates on what was going to happen with ALS, and I was supposed to sew on within the next couple weeks. My first sergeant was on paternity leave, and he's a great first sergeant. However, I think he just had a lot on his plate, and therefore I wasn't a top priority in that sense. I told Sergeant Whitaker that I didn't have the date, and I didn't even know about the waiver that you could get for sewing on when you were supposed to. And he said, "Don't worry, I got you." And within 10 minutes, I was CC'd on an email to my superintendent saying that he wanted to help out, that he wanted to look out for a fellow 4N, and he would do whatever it is that she needed him to do in order to take action in that sense. One part of the message, he did say he didn't want to overstep his boundaries, considering he was in a different unit. However, I don't see it that way. I think the Air Force, we're all a team, and at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter what unit you're with. You know, the fact that he still reaches out and still wants to help really says a lot about him, especially, you know, in his realm of first sergeants, you know, helping them out as a team. Again, really speaks volumes. I really respect him for all of that he's done. There has been other times where I've walked across the street to the BX and he's sitting outside with a bunch of first sergeants, and, you know, he sees me and he's like, "Hey, you know what, let me get you a coffee. Do you have 15 minutes? Let's just sit and chat." and we talked about ALS, we talked about how I was doing, and again, it says when someone does that, that's outside of your unit, and you don't even get that in your own unit, it really shows how much of a well-rounded airman in a sense that he is. I know he's first sergeant now, but that's not their duty necessarily to go out of their way and do that. So the fact that he embodies all of this really shows how great of a leader he is, and is one of actually the best leaders that I know.